place in the 2024 Paris Olympics.
Two more African countries, Egypt and Ethiopia, among 6 new nations invited to join BRICS as new members next year as Group seeks to enhance its counterweight against Western powers.
And across the continent, Donald J. Trump becomes the very first American president in history to have his mugshot taken following his surrender on Thursday in Georgia on charges stemming from his efforts to reverse the 2020 election results.
Well, good morning, and we kick off this edition of Morning Cafe by applauding Malkia Strikers. Congratulations, they beat Egypt 3-0, and they'll now be representing Kenya at the Olympics in France. Oh yes, and that's how we kickstart this edition of Morning Cafe. It promises to be a warm Friday here in Nairobi. How hot is a coffee where you are? My name is Freddie Ndimuli.
And I'm Flora Limuki, and what a way to end the week. And definitely these sports guys in this country have been making our week throughout this week. Started from Faith Kipyegon to Simiyu and now Malkia. And so welcome to Morning Cafe, this Feel Good Friday. We do have a great show lined up for you. And of course, on the other side, it's Miondoko and entertainment for you. You do have to stick by for that.
Most definitely. And speaking about making the weekend, making the day, this particular day we will be taking a look at what has been trending. Quite a lot has been trending. We'll be telling you all that. Courtesy of Bansi Kimui, who will be coming along. And also, you definitely want to stick around for some more baby experience. You definitely want to know what that will be all about. This morning, I'm yours truly, Stanley Nyeringita. Our social media handles are open, and we definitely expect to hear what you have to say about this particular show, about today, what you do expect to hear from the whole conversation on matters youth perspective, from the whole Miondoko. Definitely stick around for that.
To our top story this morning, Malkia Strikers are the African Cup of Nations volleyball champions after dethroning Egypt 3-0 in a scintillating final showdown staged on Thursday night in Yaoundé, Cameroon. It was a historic win for the 9 times African champions, bagging their record 10th title after 8 years in the cold. Malkia Strikers laid down the marker in the first set, shrugging off the stubborn Egypt to reign supreme, winning 25-22. The firing Malkia Strikers showed no mercy for the Egyptian side, thumping them 25-20 before making a statement in the third set, hammering their rivals a whooping 25-14 to be crowned the African champions. With that, Kenya will be making another appearance at the Olympic Games, where they will hope to fare better at next year's edition in Paris, France. Just before we take a look at today's dailies, let's get the day's diary with Flora Limuki.
Well, and on today's diary, we do have the dialogue technical committee from both the Kenya Kwanza side led by Mudhomi Thiankolu and the Azimio side led by Jeremiah Kioni to meet today to discuss, to table the agenda to the National Dialogue Committee that is led by Kimani Ichung'wah and Wiper Party Kalonzo Musyoka for the Azimio side. And Siasa Babu Namwamba to preside over the launch of the Plug Mtaani initiative, a foundation enterprise development program that will help the youth adopt a saving culture as well as educate them on matters saving. And Zimbabwe election continues as the main opposition presidential candidate Nelson Chamisa of the Citizens Coalition for Change and incumbent President Emmerson Mnangagwa lock heads in the ongoing polls. In matters BRICS, Argentina, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates to join BRICS come 2024. Elsewhere, President William Ruto is expected in Kisii and Nyamira counties today to inspection of some roads there, as well as the inspection of Nyasiongo Market in Warabu. And later, launch of rehabilitation works for Misami Ekerenyo Feeder Road at Ekerenyo, and also the launch of construction of Nyamira County Aggregation and Industrial Park. Away from that, matters international, former President Donald Trump has been booked at the Fulton County Jail Thursday on state charges that he conspired to overturn the result of the 2020 presidential election in Georgia. Trump is facing 13 separate counts in Georgia, including a racketeering charge and several fraud and false statement counts. The deadline for Trump and his 18 co-defendants in the case to term themselves is today. And today in history, on this day in 1944, some 2 months after the Allied invasion of Normandy, Paris was liberated from German occupiers as the Free French 2nd Armored Division under General Jacques Philippe entered the city. That is what we have on the diary this morning. Of course, we'll keep on updating you on what we have as the show goes on.
Oh yes, let's now go straight to the dailies this morning, and today we kick off with the Standard. On the Standard this Friday, no university fee? Here's your answer. Reprieve, a big relief for parents and their students who are due to report to public universities for their first year, as it emerged they will not be sent away for fees and that opening dates will be flexible to allow all learners to join the institutions. The story is on page 4. Universities and colleges shall admit all 2022 KCSE students as placed by cooks, pending processing of funding requests. That's a quote by Ezekiel Machogu, the Education CS. And incidentally, this story forms the basis of our question this morning. What do you think about the new funding model for universities? What do you think about the new funding model for universities? You can send your answer to TV47 News on X and on Facebook, TV47 Kenya. We'll sample some of your views as we continue with the broadcast. Still on the front page of the Standard this morning, another big story, full in-tray for Ruto's new taxman. The new Kenya Revenue Authority Commissioner General Humphrey Watanga Mulongo, when he took oath of office at the Supreme Court of Kenya building in Nairobi yesterday, he faces a full in-tray as the government moves to increase its revenues. The story is on page 6, and on the front page we have a picture of the new KRA Commissioner General Humphrey Watanga Mulongo. It's on the bottom part of the front page of the Standard. Yes, and as even we continue showing you that image on the bottom part of the Standard, other stories making it to the front page, roadblocks to go as Kindiki targets corrupt passport cartels. Stories on page 14, and the issue of passports also coming up. Yes, the CS was appearing before MPs yesterday. New Mount Kenya Forum splits Azimio leaders. A section of Azimio leaders from Mount Kenya have clashed over the new Kamwene Unity Forum, formed to agitate for the region's interests following the fresh round of bipartisan talks. The story is on page 10. On the top strip of the Standard this morning, Hustler loans, Ruto's shock warning to defaulters. The story is on page 15, and now that it's a warning, let's just see what the warning says. Hustler Fund, clients must repay loan. Over 878,000 Nakuru residents had borrowed more than 2 billion shillings from the fund. 7 million individuals have been removed from the CRB. Now, the president has warned that all borrowers of the Hustler Fund must repay all the money borrowed. Another story on the front page of the Standard, revenge or just bad luck? Wagner's chief, tragic end. Story about Yevgeny Prigozhin, the leader of the Wagner militia, who perished in a plane crash yesterday along 9 other people. And another story, a sports headline, Budapest, the shocks and thrills, sports page 43 and 44. And that's the front page of the Standard this morning. No university fee, here's your answer.
Right, and speaking about matters, answers and seeking answers, Daily Nation gives a whole how state officials fed you bogus rice. So they are scam. On August 31st last year, as the country was glued to the Supreme Court presidential election petition hearing, the Anti-Counterfeit Authority seized a consignment of counterfeit rice in Mombasa. But days later, a curious deal between rival traders for the government agency authorized the release of the fake rice into the market. So it is a whole sweetheart deal. Farm whose brand was counterfeited give accused a distribution license. And the Daily Nation front page gives us some numbers here. 10,000, this is the number of bags of counterfeit Pearl biryani rice confiscated and then released. 150 M, a mountain shilling, the seized rice consignment is estimated to be worth. Okay, bottom strip matters education. TSC to promote 36,000 teachers as pay talks resume next week. So the Teacher Service Commission will advertise 36,000 vacancies for teachers' promotions. This comes after salary increment talks collapsed on the left strip. Matters Health report here, FGM, the leading killer among young girls. This is a whole new study that says complications related to female circumcision are the leading cause of deaths among girls. That is on page 16. And wrote a warning over Hustler Fund default. So he cautions defaulters they will not access new state loans until they repay debts. And nearly all borrowers have failed to repay mobile phone loans despite being offered a 50% haircut. So despite the fact that the first tier of the Hustler Fund, the government was optimistic because it was a whole cadre of what was offered. The government was optimistic that Kenyans will actually pay. Now for this second tier that was launched around this year, it's a whole, the cadre has been added and now even Kenyans not still paying it. Okay, page 10 on that. On the top strip, revealed the secrets of Ruto and Raila talks with ex-Nigerian president. We reveal the reason President Ruto gave opposition leader Raila Odinga and ex-president Olusegun Obasanjo for his insistence that cost of living cannot be discussed. On page 4 of that. Right,
Time now to look at the People Daily. This morning, the headline there, sorry, still matters education. Fees crisis hits varsity students. Where is the money? Freshers are expected to be admitted next week, but the health portal has crashed, forcing hundreds to turn up at headquarters in desperation. And CS says he has asked universities to give learners 1 month to pay up. That story is on page 4 of the People Daily this morning, and at a glance there, institutions have been directed to take in new learners, although they owe 616 shillings in statutory deductions and to various suppliers. And only 75,272 candidates had successively applied for admissions to varsities and TVETs by Wednesday this week. Away from that, some of the applicants are having trouble signing into digital portal because of the new IDs not listed. And some varsities have offered student courses that are not listed in the portal, making registration impossible. Matters education there, and of course the big talking point throughout this week, as well as our conversation on the new university funding model. And on the top strip of the People Daily this morning, CS Kindiki promises passports crackdown. Interior Cabinet Secretary there will appearing before the Security Committee of the National Assembly yesterday to answer questions, even as he promised to crack the whip at the Immigration Office. And Kenya aims to harvest more gold in Budapest. National heroes led by Faith Kipyegon have an opportunity to snatch 3 more medals on last day of athletics championship. And some matters business there. Family Bank earns 2 billion shillings before tax. That's what we have on the People Daily this morning.
Okay, let's move on to Taifa Leo. On Taifa Leo, the big headline, Total Man mpya ageuka kipaza sauti cha rais akikabili mawaziri na upinzani alivyofanya Biwott. Kiongozi wa wengi katika bunge la kitaifa Kimani Ichung'wah amejizolea ushawishi mkubwa katika serikali ya Rais William Ruto na wengi kuamini kuwa yeye ndiye kusema. Habari hiyo iko kwenye ukurasa wa pili wa Taifa Leo. On the top strip of Taifa Leo, Raila adai jeshi lake la windwa, asema yaandama viongozi wa upinzani wanaoikosoa serikali. Another story making it to the front page of Taifa Leo today, Ruto awinda Gusii katika ziara nyingine. Rais arejea kaunti ya Nyamira kuzindua miradi wiki moja baada kuzuru kaunti jirani ya Kisii. The highlights on the front page of Taifa Leo. Mamluki afa kwenye ajali tata ya ndege. Kiongozi wa kundi la Wagner alijaribu kupindua Putin aga kwenye ajali. And matters to do with the university funding also making it to the front page of Taifa Leo. Ahadi ya Machogu kuhusu vyuo. Waziri aambia wabunge wanafunzi kwanza masomo wakisubiri mikopo yao. Habari hiyo iko kwenye ukurasa wa pili. Na kwenye spoti, leo Messi Wembe kiungo asaidia Inter Miami kutinga finali ya kombe la US Open. Habari hiyo iko kwenye ukurasa wa 20 kwenye Taifa Leo.
Right, and now to a paper that I'm pretty sure Lemuki is quite interested to look at this morning. It is The Star, and the pictorial that The Star goes with there is the top 3 having the whole shuka, and it is a whole challenge. We should really try this challenge. Now, how can you really stand supporting yourself without that? Okay.
Musalia there failed for supporting himself. Rigiji is staying close to somewhere where he can hold just in case something bad happens. Of course, the president there, I don't know if it was a smile or it was where the picture was taken from, or it was the camera person. It looks like he's having an early lead in this contest.
The president, I feel like for the presidents, his is quite natural.
Yeah.
If you take a look at it.
Yeah. And then there's just something about doing something as the first person. So when everyone else does
yes.
it looks like they're just catching up.
The start goes with how they turned up at the Ma Cultural Festival. Remember, it was starting from around Monday. And the president was there. Away from matters, the whole Ma Cultural Festival, Kindiki, Cabinet Secretary, Interior, cartels hijack supply of passports. So the CS says he's received credible intel that graft is contributing to delayed processing. And on the top strip there, the return of rogue ambassador. quote-unquote phrase, non-interference hypocrisy. That should probably be an op-ed. And the bottom strip of the Star. A damning report, grave danger, poor dam works put lives at risk. There is an audit and matters funding query. CS directs universities to admit first year's fees or no fees. And that will really form the backbone of our conversation this morning, even as we have the youth and the voice of the youth to get to hear what they have to say about the new university model. And you can also chime in on this conversation. Tell us what you think about the new university funding model. And then from that now to County 047, the Star takes a look at some hits and misses. And it says Sakaja is winning, but City remains 31 year on. And this again, if you're really big on social media, a number of Nairobians really posting at different parts of Nairobi and really just sending him or even arting him on X, even on Facebook, telling him, okay, fine, Sakaja, some parts of Nairobi are clean, the roads and all that. But these places, you really need to work on.
Okay. 1 year on.
All right.
I have the Business Daily with me. And on the Business Daily today, story of cheap cargo, PS letters and fresh 1.7 billion shilling fuel scandal. PS allows farms to inflate cargo by 17%, consumers to shoulder extra cost. Wow. That's a story, the big headline on the Business Daily today. Another story on the front page of the Business Daily, KRA to mine data from telco systems to net tax cheats. So if at all you've been receiving money or payments through your mobile money, KRA will be mining that data as well. And that's the front page of the Business Daily today. Let's now cross over the border into Tanzania. And
Tanzania, should we start with Tanzania or Uganda?
Which one do you have?
Okay, we do have actually a couple of them. So we have the Daily Monitor here as well as the Citizen, Mwananchi, Habari News and Daily News.
I'm also seeing Nairobian, but we'll be taking a look at the Nairobian a little later on.
Okay. The Daily Monitor this morning, that is the Ugandan magazine there. New details emerge on Drasha car plates from. Investigation showed that contractor joint stock global security company has mostly been an arms subcontractor with close ties to the Russian military there. And Museveni commissioned 16 factories in Mbale, also in Tanzania. Bus drivers call off strike over new user fees. Bus operators are scrambled for, that is a picture there of bus operators are scrambling for customer at Kisanyi bus terminal. And of course that story on the strike on ride-hailing firms in Uganda has been going on throughout this week. And still in Tanzania, how driving schools are ripping off new drivers, and smoky wood fires causing lung cancer. That is what we have on the top strip of the Daily Monitor this morning.
Okay, in Tanzania we have Habari Leo. Tanzania yachungulia fursa mataifa tajiri. We have a photo there of the Tanzanian president attending the BRICS summit in South Africa. Rais Samia ashiriki mkutano wao. Afrika Kusini apongezwa. Wachumi wataja manufaa nchi ikijiunga, sita za karibishwa. And it's among our highlights today. The fact that Egypt and Ethiopia are among the 6 new countries invited to join the BRICS as from next year. We also do have Daily News. Nyaringita?
Daily News, quite again, always too wordy and just looking quite busy, Daily News. But again, why Samia attendance crucial concerning the 15th BRICS summit, which concluded yesterday. Okay, can't really get those words there. But apart from that, government wants disruptions of Ngorongoro relocation, and history as CRDB issues 780 billion green bond. That is what I can quite decipher from the Daily News. But I do have also the Citizen here. The Citizen, again, the same headline on Samia in Johannesburg. So the Citizen goes with Samia's message on strengthened BRICS Africa links. She said that Tanzania envisions a BRICS Africa partnership that fully supports the continent's endeavor to promote and strengthen regional value chains. That story is on page 2. So there's a quote here by the president, Samia Suluhu Hassan. Tanzania is and remains a strong and supporter of multilateralism, more inclusive and fair global systems, and deeper south-to-south cooperation. In this regard, we remain a friend and partner of BRICS in all this, or rather in all its interventions. And from matters BRICS, the bottom strip of the Citizen, serve relief after abducted Tanzanian set free in Nigeria. And the right side there, TMA warns of El Nino effect on short trains. And yeah, basically that's TTCL sees 1 million homes linked to the internet by 2027. That's basically it for the Citizen.
All right. I think we have Mwananchi. Just a quick look at the top headline there. This is still in Tanzania. Mabadiliko ya kishindo KKKT. Dayosisi zote kuendeshwa na katiba moja, yapitishwa kwa kura 214, yatajwa kumaliza migogoro, kuleta utulivu. Mrithi wa Askofu Shaw kupewa rungu nchi nzima. That's the front page of Mwananchi. And I think because of time, we move on to Karakacha.
Oh yes, now to today's Karakacha, even as I'll ask Flo to help me with locating where People Daily's Karakacha is for today. We can begin with, and today in Karakacha, page 20 of the Daily Nation. Once again, the whole story of one caricature that looks like Cabinet Secretary Sports, Babu Namwamba. Behind him is that board of darts, and quite a number of question marks there. The day before yesterday, I believe, where he was before the National Assembly, speaking largely on how his ministry is going on. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what we have on the Daily Nation. On the Standard, looks like matters security here. Actually, for the Standard, I love how the Standard today is quite colorful and all that. One police officer saying, I say, bro, do they have IPO here? As it says, no idea, but huku kataiva, my friend. Dog there says, Haitian hustlers were, oh, Haitian hustlers, here we come. Mm-hmm. Speaks again on the police officers.
Yes, you remember the promise by the Foreign Affairs CS Alfred Mutua to actually get a few Kenyan police officers to go and assist in Haiti.
And I remember also CS Kindiki mentioning on the same.
Yes. And I saw a video online about some protests in Haiti, purportedly protesting the invitation of Kenyan police to assist there. Oh. But we are yet to confirm the authenticity of that video.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And but I can also see for People Daily. Which page is it?
We do have People Daily here, page 12 of the People Daily. The cartoon here today is on matters police officers, and pictured there is a top boss at the police, the police side there, and boss's pay rise, holding a bag of 11,000 shillings, and that he says that will put a smile on your face. And while we see other junior officers here, is holding 1,000 note a shilling. That is junior officers' pay rise. That was 1,000 shillings. That report that was released yesterday. And the junior police officer says here, some animals are more equal than others. Yeah. It's on page 12 of the People Daily.
They have it on the screens.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Right. That is which one takes it for you, Flo and Fred?
I think the one on the Daily Nation today, where the sports CS was being grilled. So many questions for him to answer there before the National Assembly. Remember, as we said, you mentioned earlier that at least this week we've had a lot of headlines to do with sports. What you forgot to mention is the CS's appearance before before the National Assembly. Yes. I think it was one of the biggest talking points this week, so definitely that one makes it for me.
I think for me it's the Daily Nation as well. Too many questions there for Ababu, and of course the biggest bone of contention was the issue about Talanta Hela, which the CS seemed to have contradicted himself while answering there. So definitely looking forward to September 4th when the CS said that Talanta Hela would be up and running.
Okay, and that wraps it up for our news review this morning. After the break, we'll be having a panel made up of Brian Mutevu, the JKUSA president. That's the student union of the JKUAT University. Dr. Gadanga Njeri, a scholar and youth advocate, and Levin Okumu, political strategist. Remember, being Friday, we're looking at the youth perspective. And remember our question today. What do you think of the new funding model for universities? You can continue sharing your answers at TV47 News on X and on Facebook, TV47 Kenya. We'll now take a short break. Don't go too far. You're watching Morning Cafe. He's the president of JKUSA, that's the Students Association at JKUAT, and Dr. Githanga Njeri, a scholar and youth advocate as well. Let me just post this so that you can interact with this team. Incidentally, are you on X, formerly Twitter? We could start with you. What's your handle?
The Political Seraph.
At Political Seraph?
Yes.
At Political Seraph?
Mutevu_Brian.
At Mutevu_Brian and at
Githanga_Njeri.
And Githanga_Njeri. Remember, my X handle is at Fred Indimuli. And remember to use the hashtag Morning Cafe and also tag the handle at TV47 Kenya. Just a moment as I do this so that we can start off the discussion. There you go. And it's a flight. So, big discussions today, of course, to do with the university funding. That will be our biggest discussion. But before we get to that, something else happened this week. On Wednesday, the president made a promise to actually have a chat with the TikTok CEO regarding a possible moderation of content on that platform in Kenya. Yesterday, he had that chat virtually with the TikTok boss. And as a number of promises were made, including TikTok promising to set up office in Kenya as well for a possible assistance on moderation of content. Remember, all this was coming in the wake of that petition to have TikTok banned in Kenya. And we want to start off from there. Lady and gentlemen, we live in the age of social media. And basically, and I'm sure even you, everything you do, at least a huge percentage of your day is spent on social media. You've seen what has been happening on TikTok, perhaps the fastest rising social media space in Kenya today. And there's a lot of talk about the kind of content that goes on there, especially after hours, at night. A lot of concern has been raised. But our question probably is, do you think that the president's intervention in moderating content on social media, whichever platform it may be, is actually necessary? Do we really need the president to come into this? Let's start with you, Levin.
From where I sit, I think that the president is right, that we need to regulate some of the contents that are in TikTok, because we cannot erode our culture and moral standing because of such things that are being posted there. I think it is welcomed and some of us will support it. Mm-hmm. Yes.
But Brian, the issue is that many people are making money. Many young people are now making money through these platforms. And even some of this content that we say may not necessarily be very savory, is still a money-making venture for some. Even for TV, you're allowed some leeway, especially after a certain threshold. After 10 p.m., you can start... you can change your content a bit. Don't you think that by getting into that space, the president could be affecting a money-making venture for the youth?
Okay, first of all, it's true when you look at it from that perspective that it will affect some people who are making income. But again, I believe that freedom that goes unchecked is no longer serves the purpose of freedom. It's something else. But now when we look at even the president taking up to maybe regulate this, he has to understand, first of all, where did this come from? I want to take you back a little bit to 2020, when we had some celebrities on Instagram. Mm-hmm. So it is not something that started with maybe in it did not start with TikTok, basically. In 2020, we had what was happening right there when people were less entertained with a guy, I don't know whether it was Tory Lanez or something in the US. And that is something that people copied in order to come to maybe now the other social media platforms. It kind of spread wings to the other social media platforms. So even if we're checking TikTok today, are we checking the other social media platforms? Because you just go to X right now, you'll find some things that are very XX, you know? So just go to the other platforms, you'll still find some things that are very not good, you know? So as much as you want to check TikTok, are you also checking the other platforms for the type of content that is there?
Okay.
Yeah, and that also young minds are basically being exposed to. Mm-hmm. Because for an adult, it's your choice. But now the major thing that we have to look is, especially for the young people that are there, the ones that are forming, the minds that we're forming in the society, are they morally upright? Mm-hmm. So that is what we have.
But then again, it raises a question, Jerry, that if at all that's the kind of interest that people who go to TikTok have, that kind of content, because it does not mean that young people are basically minors. Many young people in universities are over 18 years, they are basically adults. Yet they go to TikTok looking for that kind of content, hence making it even more popular. Don't you think that the fact that they are adults, they should be left to their devices?
Not exactly. You see, every society has its opium. And so you see, sometimes, even as much as people are adults, they are going to be inclining to their sort of opium that is actually self-destructive. So you see, for me as a leader, there is a moral obligation on you to actually offer guidance that is going to be constructive and also that is wholesome to the people you are leading. So I think the president is actually coming from a good place where he's actually stepping up to the leadership that actually the people entrusted in him. And that leadership didn't just involve just economic empowerment. It involved the holistic view of the society because at the end of the day, every person has their own legacy, and we don't want to be saying during this particular period, that's when the moral fabric of the country of Kenya really went down, and then someone will be like, and who was the sitting president, you see. So the president coming from a good place, and also from a leadership position, it's a calling to actually lead people. More of, you know, most of the time as a people, we may know what is good for us, but we may also now lean towards what is actually not very good for us. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. As an income generating platform for many young Kenyans, it says a lot about the kind of content that people are opting for. The fact remains that there's a leeway for creativity. You can create any kind of content. Are we saying that young Kenyans are basically lazy, that they're going for content that is easy to create, cheap to create, and not necessarily giving it a proper thought?
I don't think so. I think that it is not that the Kenyans youth are lazy or what have you, but the president, it's a progressive move to try and regulate some of these things, because if you leave such people to their own devices, they will have to go there. So it is a good move to just try and regulate, and it is a progressive nature. It has not gone to the other apps and whatever, but I think going to the future, let us start with TikTok, mm-hmm. and then we can go to Instagram and other platforms.
Yes.
Yes.
Because the president is keen on revenue collection, and in his plans, even in the finance bill, issues to do with digital content creation came up. And there's now, I think it was initially a proposal of 15% tax. It came down to 5% tax, withholding tax on digital content creation. But what does it say about the creativity of Kenyans? That the kind of content they're creating. The platform is already there for you. You can create content for free and just post it there. Is it that we do not have enough content?
First of all, we can't look at it from that perspective again, because a quote that I've had numerous times, it's never news when a dog bites a man, but it's always news when a man bites a dog. This is something that I've had in almost all the platforms that I have visited. So you as a young person, as maybe a person who's a content creator, you want what sells. You want what is in the market. So if this negative aspect, or this whatever is what is selling, yes, then everybody wants a piece of the cake. And that is why maybe you will see that most people will go towards it. So that also goes to show a reflection of what is really happening in the society. If most people are going that way, it's like the quail business, you know. Most people went to quails. Why? Because it had money. The same way, if this dirty content is what has money, then I believe that most people will go there. But again, I believe it's also a trend. Trends do die. And what is morally upright sometimes always has a way to transcend what is wrong. So
another question for you, because from your background at the JKUAT, which is probably the premier technology university in Kenya, is it possible to actually moderate that kind of content? Because the kind of channel that we're talking about also has a live aspect to it, and probably that is the most abused. Is it possible to actually moderate content on it?
Yeah, actually, it's even looking at it from a bigger angle. Yeah, there is basically even chance to increase the employees that are going to take part in, that are going to be absorbed into TikTok. Why am I saying this? I don't know whether you remember some time back when there were some shootings that were happening, let's say in a place like New Zealand, and the steps that were taken by Facebook to employ a couple of people that would be able to just watch and be able to flag off the content if it's the wrong type of content. And this was about the mass shootings. Somebody would just go on live and decide, let me make it rain, and it's raining bullets in a church or somewhere. So the move that Facebook took at the time was to ensure that there are people who can go sit down and watch this content, you see. So that there is also an aspect of human beings that has to be employed, because I think also artificial intelligence, although it's coming up really quick, I think it's not gotten to that point whereby they can evaluate, or the artificial intelligence can be used to judge. But I see it as a chance to create more employment, especially for our young people here in Kenya, if you'll be among the people who can be able to watch that content and flag it off if it's bad content, and just have a set like guide to know what is bad content and what is good content, or what is immoral content, and in that context.
Interesting, meaning that there will be need for a human resource, 24 hours to actually just moderate the content in Kenya alone.
Definitely, and all over the world. And TikTok is a big body. They can afford. Okay. I believe they can afford.
Banjeri, there's also the issue of culture, and you mentioned it earlier, that the youth in Kenya, this is very un-African, exposing yourself, nudity and all these things. Yet that is what Kenyans feel is selling. What does it say about our culture? And is that something that can be reversed?
Yeah, definitely can be reversed. But Fred, you realize we always say desperate times calls for desperate measures. So I think this whole thing is actually coming from a point of desperation, that it's actually become very hard for youth to procure employment, whether you have the papers or not. And we are in this era of a culture where it's about, we are having the who do you know kind of a curse, or tagging on the youth's shoulders. And so you find maybe someone under normal circumstances, they wouldn't really be exposing themselves. But there is a way that I think challenges can actually push you to a version of yourself which maybe you never even saw coming. Not to justify what is actually happening. It's totally unethical, it's immoral, and it's something that we need to turn around and change. But me, I also want to look at it from a point of just more of understanding rather than condemning without understanding where this is actually coming from. So for me, it is not the African culture. We know the African culture was always about being decent. We've never been a liberal society as the African people. But you see, with the youths being very embracing of anything, and mostly a survival mechanism. It's more of a jungle where it's survival for the fittest. Yes. So someone is going to be ready to sacrifice their morality for the shilling, or mostly they would love to say for the dollar. But at the end of the day, it's a rallying call, really, for our youths to actually create a better environment that is actually going to make people uphold that which we have always known, that it defines us as a people, so that at the end of the day, we are speaking to the cultures in terms of our policies. The kind of policies we are making in Parliament, are they speaking to our culture? Because you don't make policies that actually push people to the edge in terms of, when the stomach is hungry, you do what you got to do, So are we making policies that speak to our culture? Are we at the grassroots? Are we enabling people in ways that actually speak to our culture? So that at the end of the day, we are actually driving people towards upholding that which we feel is moral as a people.
Okay, as we wrap up this conversation on TikTok, there's a petition before Parliament, the National Assembly, for a total ban of TikTok in Kenya. Yes, the president is talking about moderating the content. Do you think we should go that route, that probably just do away with this particular social media space that people have abused so badly?
First of all, Fred Ndimuli, the three of us sitting here, we are youthful people in this country. We have a lot of time in this country, and we have a right to ask these questions that we are asking. On the issue of banning TikTok, as you have said, and rightly so, that it pays a lot of people just by using that platform. And banning it completely, I think it's not welcomed. I think what need to be done, it's what the president is doing by trying to find a way to regulate, and at the end of the day, as I've said, it is welcomed, and it is a good move.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, you're watching the Youth Perspective on Morning Cafe right here on TV47 with me, Fred Ndimuli. Today we ask, what do you think of the new funding model for universities? That's the discussion we'll be having after the break. It is a top story on the Standard today. No university fee. Here's your answer. A reprieve. Yet there's been a lot of confusion about the model. Up until yesterday, only about 40% of those admitted to universities and other tertiary institutions had applied for the funding. What is happening? That after the break. Cup of Nations volleyball champions after dethroning Egypt 3-0 in a scintillating final showdown staged on Thursday night in Yaoundé, Cameroon. It was a historic win for the 9 times African champions, bagging their record 10th title after 8 years in the cold. Malkia strikers laid down the marker in the first set, shrugging off the stubborn Egypt to reign supreme, winning 25-22. The firing Malkia strikers showed no mercy for the Egyptian side, thumping them 25-20 before making a statement in the third set, hammering their rivals a whooping 25-14 to be crowned the African champions. With that, Kenya will be making another appearance at the Olympic Games, where they will hope to fare better at next year's edition in Paris, France. Perspective today, this Friday on Morning Cafe, and we have with us Levin Okumu, political strategist, Brian Mutevu, the president of the JKUAT Students Association, JKUSA, and Dr. Githanga Njeri, a scholar and youth advocate. We now want to dwell on the matters, to delve into the matters of university funding. And remember, the question we are asking today with regard to this: what do you think of the new funding model for universities? What do you think of the new funding model for universities? It is what is headlining on the front page of the Standard. No university fee. Here's your answer. It is also on the front page of the People Daily, and I think it has also been captured in some of the dailies as well. Yesterday, the CS for Education came out to try and clarify on this matter. And According to the Standard, it is a big relief for parents and their students who are due to report to public universities for their first year. As it emerged, they will not be sent away for fees, and that opening dates will be flexible to allow all learners to join the institutions. But is this really the problem? We have with us a student leader at the university, Brian.
Yes.
How is this thing affecting you? Because yes, we may be talking about those reporting for the very first time next week or the week after to universities, but you are a continuing student at the university. Definitely this new funding model affects you. What is your story with regard to this?
Okay, first of all, we need to clarify something. This new funding model is supposed to start with the people that are going to be admitted into the university in this year, 2023. So, first of all, it might not affect us, the continuing students, because for us, I think we'll continue being funded through the mean average method that was being used before. Mm-hmm. But now, when it comes to even the implementation now, we are foreseeing something that, we are foreseeing some challenges that have been actually are coming in with the new funding model. The first one is that there has not been a lot of clarity. Even you, Will, if I ask you, or we put the CS here and we ask him, okay, so what qualifies a person to be placed in a specific class among the 4 classes that have been set by the government?
Vulnerable,
yeah,
less vulnerable, needy, very needy.
Yes. So when we come to that point is, first of all, we don't have any clarity as to who is this vulnerable and who is extremely needy. We do not have clarity on that selection algorithm. We don't know whether it's your pay slip, you know. And even if you have a pay slip, let's say, let me take a very known maybe profession. Let's say you're a police officer. We know most police officers are actually the sole breadwinners in their families, especially when they go for recruitment in their villages out there. So will the mechanism of just having a pay slip be enough to gauge that a specific person is, you know, within a specific class? So first of all, that has not been brought to the light of day. The other one is also the time perspective. You know, Kenya is very great at coming up with ideas, and I believe sometimes the government is very good with coming up with bright ideas, you know, by bright people, that this is something that has been ailing our universities are in debt, and you know what, here we have come up with something very good. And once we come up with something, we come up with the idea, say, let's start with the idea, but at the end of the day, there are no structures that have been put in place. Once we say, let's adopt this, is when people now come and start setting up the structures, you know, instead of first of all looking at it from the perspective of what are the questions that might be raised by this model and setting up the relevant structures in order to ensure that this takes place. So the time aspect again, why am I saying the time aspect? Okay, even if you're a parent and you're a person who maybe had money and you have a good pay slip, this money definitely, you had maybe even a student, or you knew what was existent before, and your student has done quite well. They have gone to the university. Pesa ikaangi tu kwa bank, to put it in simple terms. You put this money into investment so that it can show you some profit. So here is a situation whereby you are being told, wewe ni mdosi uko na pesa. Wewe hii pesa yako tumia kusomesha mwanafunzi. And you had not planned for it. So again, the hurry in which we have this culture of hurrying things when it comes to, and it's not just in the education system, but Kenya has this culture of coming up with an idea and just rushing it. What would be so wrong? We're already in debt, you know. So if this model is so well, what would be so wrong with saying, this is what is going to happen in the next 2 years? So what happens in these 2 years? It will be enough to make sure that first of all, there is enough stakeholder conversation. And the other one is also setting up the structures. This is something that I will insist on. The structures are very important in setting up anything for any institution. So the parents, of course, and you're an 18-year-old. So nobody has the obligation to take you to school. This is not like primary school education, whereby if your parent does not take you there, you can report to the chief and your parent can be arrested, you know. This is something whereby even most comrades, despite parents having money.
You're already an adult.
You're already an adult.
Mali ya serikali.
Hey, nobody has the financial obligation. Mm-hmm. It's not a must for you to even educate your kids once they are past 18 years, you know. They are adults, they can do it themselves. So that is one. The other one is about the application. You know, it's subject to, this is something that people, I don't know whether even the government is saying the truth when they say that there will be no fee payment. then why is it made on application basis? What happens to a person who does not have the information about the application process? Because again, even with the HELB model that was there in the universities, we know that most comrades who come from villages, they do not even have access to this technology. When they come to the universities, when their parents surprise them with at least smartphones. And this is where they learn about the HELB application process. So most of them even start applications from their second year of study. So nobody is even going to the villages to tell them. There's no government. I've not seen any government initiative going to the grassroots level for the Wanjiko that voted the government in to tell them that this is how this application process will take place. So there's a lot of lack of clarity with that. The other one was about, so this is actually it's a guaranteed bottleneck that a lot of people will miss out on this application despite the class in which you are in. And even if the government places you there, you still have to apply. You know, and then the other thing is about the funding.
You're not necessarily guaranteed that you will get it.
Yeah, it's subject to availability of funds. So if it's subject to availability of funds, we have all seen what happens even when it comes to something like HELB. So if it's subject to availability of funds, you can give the first lot of people, and then to the other ones, subject to availability of funds, you're not getting any funds. Pesa imeisha. Sasa nyinyi mkiwa huko nyuma ya mstari, you're not getting anything.
I will come back to you, Brian. Yeah. But Njeri, you mentioned something earlier on when we were talking about TikTok, the issue of disillusionment among the Kenyan youth. Probably it's what we are seeing with this university admissions, because out of a possible 876,000 young Kenyans who had qualified for placement into various universities or tertiary institutions, be it TVET or other colleges, only about 286,000 applied for those positions. Now we're seeing, and this was a revelation yesterday by the CS, that out of that 280,000, only about 72,000 applied for this funding. Part of that is because of the issues that Brian has mentioned, access to the internet, probably lack of clarity. They are not really sure what they're applying for or where they should apply. It is a new system. Do you think that this is resolving any issue or further worsening the issue of disillusionment among Kenyan youth?
Actually, yeah. This is actually going to drive the youth into more disillusionment than actually we have ever seen before. Because for a fact, I'm going to tell you, Fred, a lot of youths, let me say a lot of campus students, don't just use HELB for school fees. I remember when I was in campus, we used to use HELB for fare to get to campus. You get there, HELB is what you use to do your shopping, and it's actually a major part of your upkeep, especially because you realize a lot of people are coming from households that are still actually below the poverty line, you know. So your parent is just going to know you have HELB, so a story of fare and shopping, you are sorted. Let's talk when the campus is halfway. I mean, when the semester is halfway or coming to an end. That's when they expect you to be asking for any money for upkeep. So when actually the government says no university fee, or there is a relief for parents because they are going to be allowed time before the student can be sent home, it's a very simplistic view to how this funding has actually enabled a lot of people actually achieve their education in the tertiary institution. And so even when you look at, you've just mentioned the number of applicants versus the people who had actually been given entry into the institutions, you're going to realize it's more of knowledge gap. Because I can tell you, it's only because we are in the city or we are in the urban setup, and we just think it is just normal for you to have access to information, for you to even access your internet on the phone. You go to the villages, a lot of people are on Kabambe, and even those who have smartphones don't really have a lot of know-how, how to navigate. And when you go there is when you actually realize knowledge gap is real, even on the simplest kind of news that we find on the streets here. So most people didn't apply because they don't even know what's happening. First of all, maybe they have just heard it as rumors that the funding model was changed, the application process was changed, but they don't even know what exactly is happening. They don't even know application already started. You get, because as a government in Kenya, we are very swift to make policies and do things. But when it comes to civic education, that's where we draw the line, you know. And so we thrive on that lack of information, because when there's no information, there's confusion, and then nobody holds you to account. You see, like what happens with CBC. We roll out that thing when typically 99% of stakeholders in education didn't even understand it. They didn't understand the whole model. They also didn't understand how it was supposed to work. They also didn't understand we were supposed to move from here to here. So it became a maze of confusion. And even if you sat someone here working in the ministry, they were not going to be able to give you clarity on exactly how this thing was supposed to work. Now that is the replica of what is happening with the HELB funding. So we are seeing a lot of just fumbling around things and no clarity, and nobody knows exactly. You sit in front of a computer, make an application. How do they decide that I am less needy, I'm vulnerable? You see, and at the end of the day, it is more of, nobody even guided you on how to fill that whole application. So you're gonna put things there, and maybe you come even from a household where you don't even afford a meal a day, but someone is going to decide you belong to the needy, not the vulnerable. Yeah. And at the end of the day, who do you go to question? Okay. If they place you on needy and not vulnerable, where do you go to appeal your case and say, I'm actually supposed to be vulnerable?
Levin, if at all the Education Ministry does not extend this duration for more students to apply, it means that very many of them will miss out on the funding that previously other students have enjoyed directly without needing to apply for, because government used to subsidize university education generally. But now you are required, each and every student is required to apply directly for it. Only 72,000 have applied so far, with only a few days left before the deadline, meaning that over 60% of students who are yet to apply could miss out on this, if at all the government does not. What does it say about this cohort that was meant to join the university this year, but could miss out because of this lack of clarity for government?
From where I sit, I see a crisis going to the future. Picking up from whatever my colleagues have said, is that there is lack of communication from the ministry side on how this thing is supposed to be done, and everything. There is a lot of darkness concerning this new funding program. I think what should need to be done going to the future is that the ministry should start being clear on whatever thing they want to do going to the future. And I have tried to talk to some people. Some parents are saying there is no need of me educating my kids here in Kenya. Let me even go to the University of Dar es Salaam or University of Dodoma. That is the dangerous risk that we are looking in the future. So from where I sit, I think number one thing that should happen, there should be clarity from the ministry. That is the first thing that should happen.
Okay. But Brian, so where's the space of student leadership in this? You as a student leader, you've already identified the problem. There's lack of communication, and that one we're in agreement with, that the ministry on this one, they failed in communicating the issue. Even I as a journalist still do not understand all these issues. We've talked about the knowledge gap, especially in areas that rural based. As a student leader, and you know, the majority of students at your university do not come from urban areas.
That's true.
Yes. So what is the role of the student leadership? Now, is there anywhere you come in this?
So first of all, the government has placed us in such a position that we are not involved in anything. Because among the stakeholders of education, one of the biggest stakeholders is actually we are the stakeholders. And this is something that I keep on saying. Without students, where are the institutions? There is no one to school, you know. So basically for us as the student leaders, I believe that, you know, we will find a way to be heard. If the government will not listen to us, we will make them listen one way or another. It's not a threat. It's basically just a promise. You know, because we have seen the methods. You know, sometimes these methods exist. You know, if you want to call people to the conversation, to the table, then we must just find a way. We have the numbers, and I believe this should just be a clarion call to all our students. Do not look at this problem from the perspective that it's not affecting you as a person. It's affecting the future of those institutions. So what is the future of that person that is going to miss out maybe when it comes to this application process? And the one thing that I tell you, it's better, not a good thing, a rock and a hard place, you know, but it's better to have a society with educated, jobless people than to have a society that lacks education and lacks jobs. That is one thing that I will put
Yet
in clarity.
you've seen that out of the over 800,000 people
Yes.
who qualified for placement to universities and other colleges,
Yes.
actually almost just above a quarter of that
Yeah.
applied for these positions. The rest are not interested in that.
Yeah.
What do you make of that?
Yeah, again, it's the pain and the disillusionment that we are basically talking about.
Because you talk about generally it's better to have more educated but unemployed.
Yeah.
But now people are opting to be, okay, fine, I'll go do a simple boda boda or a mama mboga job, but university education, whether or not I was qualified, I do not really need to pursue that.
Yeah, first of all, there is the aspect of choice. And then there's the ones that will miss out deliberately because of a system that has been put in place, you know. So for those ones who perceive it as a, you know, maybe this is not something that is said to help me, it's okay. Not everyone can be the same in the society, you know. But again, this also has to come from somewhere. If those who have, okay, let me just give you a very funny tale. So there's this person, a tourist that I was told about, who went to a country and he knew so many languages. He knew maybe Chinese, he knew Russian, he knew another language. But when it came to, he went to speak to a Turkish man and he could not speak in Turkish. So the friend that was translating these things to the Turkish man asked the Turkish man, you know, you should learn many languages. And the Turkish man looked at the person and said, why? So that I can be like him. He knows so many languages and yet we cannot communicate. From this essence of this story, it might have looked foolish when this person thought that learning a foreign language would not aid him in any way, but that was his perspective. These many languages that this person knew had no impact on the life of this Turkish person, you know. So again, when you look at the education system, now tracing back to what is happening in our education system, it's simply because you do not see value in it. And that is why you do not want to take part in it. But if we had an education system that worked for us, if we had a system that, you know, you're coming from, that's why medicine has always been a very prestigious course. And every day you'll find that all the classes of medicine, like, they'll always be filled in our universities, you know. But now you're even finding a case that in the last 5 years, that people who are taking medicine are no longer getting jobs. So what is happening? The numbers are going to drop significantly. So people want what will create value for them at the end of the day.
Okay.
So that is why I believe that, more people are not taking it up. But now for the ones that are really have the thirst for education, but again, a system is being put into place that will prevent them from quenching this thirst. We have to come up with people who have the power, you know, who can advocate for these people to ensure that these people who are voiceless at least can be heard in our society.
Okay, and shortly we'll be listening to Levin on the politics of this as a political strategist and where the place of politics in ensuring that this system works for the students. We've seen what politicians have done for students even in Eldoret. But we are seeing a situation where a government policy and government systems are continuously failing the Kenyan youth. This is a case in point, and as I'd mentioned, even what some of the systems and policies that what someone tried to implement in Eldoret at the government level and directly failing the youth. So should the youth sit back and watch as this happens? We had that veiled threat by the student leader here, Brian, about what possibilities the youth have before them. But should that be the direction that we are taking now?
First of all, Fred, you realize youths are very powerful challengers of status quo. And the power that the youths have, especially when they come together, is very immense. And I think that's why every time there is a policy, it always seems to be working against the youths, not for the youths. And that's why there is always a deliberate attempt to deny the youths an opportunity to be sitting at the table where policies and decisions are made, so that there is a systemic move to always put you at an arm's length, you know. I think what Brian is saying is very valid, because if you can't listen to me when we are at the dining table where we are making merry and cheering, then we're gonna listen to each other on the streets sometimes, on social media, where youths can be very loud on critiquing things and social mobilizations towards issues. And at the end of the day, it is more of, we are speaking to a youth who are disenfranchised, who are disengaged, and who are actually very disconnected to a government that never seems to be an effective body to
Do you
bring
think
in
it's a
the
systemic
change.
issue that the youth are expected to fight for their own right, that nothing will be given to you on a silver platter? You're young, you're strong, fight for it.
It's really a systemic issue, Fred. I can tell you, as someone who was on the heart of the campaigns last year, even when you're a youth, there's already outright discrimination towards you, and you're gonna be marginalized from the get-go, simply because of your age. Ageism is real, especially in Kenya, because someone is already feeling, you are 25, you can't be achieving that at 25, and I am 50, So someone is already thinking we are competing rather than complementing each other. And so what's the best way to keep the youths trying to chase the wind is to make sure the policies are always against you. And most of the things that are done in this country, I always say, there's always a catch. This whole help funding, there's a catch. And the devil is always in the details. Okay. Very few times is it always going to be about the people. So at the end of the day, it's really a rallying call for the youth to actually know it's a fight situation.
It's about time.
It's a fight
Another veiled threat there.
Yeah.
Watch this space. Levin, when it comes to politicians and politics, education is always that one thing that they pay lip service to. Apart from, I think, President Mwai Kibaki, who campaigned on the back of free primary education and implemented it immediately after assuming office, in fact, like 7 days after. Other presidents simply talk about education as a passing thing. They focus more on the economy, on agriculture and other issues. Yet we see that more and more education needs to feed even the politics and not vice versa. So why is it that the politics of this country does not really work towards enhancing or boosting education?
I think, first of all, it is quite unfortunate that most of these politicians take education as a lip service, as whatever you're saying. But when I look at this government, considering the amount of money they have put on education on this budget, I think there is a lot of goodwill from the side of this government. However, having said that, I think there is a lot that needs to be done from the ministry itself and all stakeholders, including my colleagues here. There need to be a serious national conversation around this education matter going to the future.
Who will push this conversation now? Because the CS for Education has come out and say there's actually relief. It's not what you thought. It's actually much easier. But the youth are still suffering. So who will push for this conversation?
Fred Ndimuli, going to the future, and when you look at the policies of Dr. William Ruto, we need a lot of skilled manpower going to the future that is from the youth. And education, it's at the center of it, it's at the core of everything that is going to happen in the future. So, as I have said, from where I sit, I see a lot of goodwill from this government. I think there will be a lot of changes. Some of the things that Brian here is talking about, I think going to the future in months, they will be tackled. Yes.
Okay, Brian, the general feeling is that all this is not worth it. People are talking about the process being too complex just to apply for this. People in rural areas do not even have access to the internet. Those without national identity cards are having a rough time accessing the application portal. Yeah, it requires even digital signatures, and many students don't even have an idea how to navigate around that. Yeah. What we are seeing with the students, or people who should be university students, saying that all this for what? For 4 years at the university, for me to spend more money that I don't have or my parents don't even have, and at the end of the day, I come out with nothing. Surely, this disillusionment is justified.
Fred, first of all, for any person that is out there, okay, I'm personally not stepped out of the university in order to tell people that, you know, it's not worth it. But to everyone hearing my voice or seeing me in this interview today, I want to inform them something that is really important. Education is not in vain. It may not help you today, it may not help you tomorrow, but there is a day after tomorrow. And that is where we see education will have an impact on our society. For a lot of changes that we have seen in this country, they did not come out of people who lacked an education. And they had to have an education in order to have something at least to even put to the table in terms of structures, implementation of anything that comes to this country or this nation, and actually even to contribution of the world. So education is not in vain. That is one thing that I want to put clearly. So to anyone who might, even I hear a lot of people simply because they have a little bit of coin saying that, you know, everything else, you know, education is not that important as long as you have money, you know, no, that is not the path. If you've made it through other means, it's okay. Everybody has their own luck in life, but education at no point will it ever be useless. And also, the other thing about that I always wonder about the government is as simple as this. If you're not fighting for the future, then what are you fighting for? If your today is not that great, then if you're not fighting for the future, then basically what are you doing? What are you really fighting for? Because without tomorrow, then I think there's nothing ahead. So for what the politicians are doing for us as students, the surprising thing is that they were the ones who are here with, they were us. So I don't know what happens when we get there. I don't know what happens when we get there. Is it really the person who never really had those pure intentions from the word go? Because look at most of these student leaders. Tomorrow they're the ones who will be seated in those seats. Even our president, for example, he was in Youth for KANU, if I'm not wrong, 1992. So they were the same leaders. They are the people that we are here today. So sometimes I wonder what really happens when you get there, you know. But again, also, I'm not saying that everything is wrong about this system. Having it whereby, of course, not everybody is financially advantaged, and also having a place whereby people without this financial advantage are also going to the university for free. That is amazing. But now the issue we are saying is the time of implementation. The other thing is looking at it from the aspect of subject to availability of funds. Like, yes, you've put it, you want to help the needy people, but at the end of the day, have you put in the right structures to ensure that the needy people that you so want to help are the ones benefiting? Have you closed all the loopholes that are there? If you set a system to do a specific thing, you know, and it does not do that specific thing. I have a very good lecturer by there at Pursue Engineering, and he says if you make a tool that cannot achieve the goal of the tool, then that tool is useless. And in fact, those resources would have been better utilized somewhere else. So what we're looking at is somewhere where the tools that are created are not going to serve the purpose that they intended. And what is the purpose of creating such a tool at the end of the day? So And also, as we ask for something to come for free, somebody has to know that, okay, nothing comes for free. And for everything that is free, somebody is paying for it. So this is also something that Kenyans need to establish. But now it's just a matter of priorities. Once the government was taking, 3% for government housing, a house is basically a structure. It's not generating any income. It's a place for people to live. But education is a resource. What? Human resource. You can export labor to other countries, which is a good idea that the president is actually coming up with, But how will you export this labor if you do not have the skilled labor? And this is not something that will happen right here. I'm looking actually at the future. Maybe when I'm the president of this nation and I'm like, something happened when I was in university.
You should have fixed it earlier.
I should have fixed it earlier. Now Kenya does not have skilled labor, and yet there's a country that is almost empty somewhere there, and they need skilled labor for their jobs.
Yet the youth can also be blamed for a very passive approach. Yes, some of these recommendations, and as Brian said, probably the young people are not invited to the table when these reforms are being effected. They are not part of the decision making. Yet the presidential working party, the presidential workforce that came up with some of these reforms, went around the country collecting views. And these young people had the opportunity to actually present their views to this team. Yet we know Kenyan youth are very passive on these matters. They have no time to go and share their thoughts, yet it affects them directly. They should also take some blame, don't you think?
Maybe, maybe not. Because the reason why the youths are very passive is very valid. Because over the decades, we've got to a place where the youths feel not listened to, they feel voiceless, and also recently they feel very helpless about the whole situation in the country. And as well, when I give my views, do they count? You see, the same way, right now especially, we've seen over the last, maybe it's always been there, but over the last couple of elections, people have got to this place where they feel my vote doesn't count. And so they are at a place where what's the motivation to go and vote? So, it's human nature. Every time you feel you don't count, then you feel disconnected really from that whole setup. And you see, Fred, I'll keep saying, there's a deliberate systemic exclusion of youths in all spheres of decision making in this country. Anywhere you go, even go to a family setup, hold a meeting of a family and tell me how many times the young people will be listened to, how many times their voice is going to be felt like it counts, how many times their opinion will be considered. You are always viewed from a place of you know less, you have no experience. It's always like you should wait for tomorrow. You should wait for tomorrow. But the primary school I actually went to used to say tomorrow belongs to the child. And now, because today I'm here, it still means tomorrow
belongs
is
to the other child.
Tomorrow belongs to the other child. So
No longer
it will never be my today. So at the end of the day, yes, youths are pulling back into a lot of things in the country, but it's very valid. And also at the same time, we want to say, when you have so much to deal with as a youth in this country, just look, you have a family to feed, you need to pay rent, you need to do all these other things, but you don't have a job, you don't have people who believe in you, you don't have systems that are actually working for you, and actually everything seems to be against you. So at the end of the day, you're going to be fighting so many battles for you to even be at a place where you feel validated. First of all, even your existence sometimes feels is not validated. And that's essentially why, as a youth, most of the times, if you are even asked for your opinion about things, you're not interested, really. You're not interested. But it's for me now to challenge the youth. Keep talking. I always say, keep putting your voice out there. Don't worry about whether someone is listening or not. That's not for you. Your job is to put your voice out there. And actually, even one of my campaign slogan was, it's time. So it's time for you to speak up in your own setup, in your space. If you're in an office where there's a lot of office politics and anything, keep talking. If you're in a home, keep talking. If you are in a political space, if you're in a political party, you see a lot of political parties will have youth wings, but they are just cosmetic. I mean, how many times do you see those youth wings being empowered? Really, very
I see a lot
few
of people
times.
being nominated as youth representatives to Parliament.
It's going to look like it when you're looking from outside. But from the inside, you're being nominated to sit in Parliament as a youth, but you're not articulating your issues or the youth issues. You are being remote controlled by the people who are actually the beneficiary of where you are there. So from outside, maybe to speak to the constitutional requirement, you're going to be nominated there. But from a policy perspective, from an impact perspective, you're gonna be putting somebody's voice out there, because you have to remember you are nominated. You are not there by merit from the ballot. You are nominated, so you're actually articulating somebody's voice and somebody's interest. And you see, even when you vie as a youth, it's very rare. Okay, we normally see youths being elected, but what percentage? What percentage of the total number of the seats? So at the end of the day, as a youth, even when you are at the decision table, you have to play ball to a lot of things. And the youth and the agenda of the youth that you should actually be articulated is actually put on the back burner, because you have to survive.
And as we look for solutions to this issue, we could say that probably the CS's offer yesterday for universities to actually admit all students whether or not they have fees, that in itself could be a confirmation that there is actually a crisis in the entire system. As we look for a solution, do you think that probably the government or the ministry should consider putting on hold this new funding model until they get the systems right? Or do you think that we're already past that point?
I think in Dumuli the question should be, are these people who are graduating ready for the market? When you talk to people who have already graduated, 2, 3, 4 years after graduating, they don't have anything to do. I think the question should be, are we equipping these people so that they can go there to the job market? And the answer is no. So from where I sit, I think they should put an hold to all this, and public participation, number one, to all stakeholders until they come up with the right solution. Yes.
Now, before we wrap up this discussion this morning, there's something else that also features in our dailies today, and it has to do with the Hustler Fund. It's on the front page of both the Standard and the Daily Nation. The President's warning, a Ruto warning of a Hustler Fund default. The President cautions defaulters will not access new state loans until they repay debts. And nearly all borrowers have failed to repay mobile phone loans despite being offered a 50% haircut. They call it a haircut there. But the majority of people accessing these loans are the young people. People who are looking for an option for probably money for business, money for investment, money for other things. What does it say when a majority of 50% of them just decide we're not paying back this money? Brian.
So first of all, the Hustler Fund was met by a lot of politics. If we all remember, there is one very youthful leader who told people, we don't have enough prisons for you. So basically, the consequences are not enough in order for you to
Hatuna
pay
heshima
back.
hata ya serikali ba.
Hawatambu. Lakini kama unainama kama comrade, the other thing is, okay, why are, people, once these funding things came up, actually these ones for giving loans, people borrow for different reasons. The one thing that even the government was clear about, if I'm not wrong, there's a time that the president said about we borrow for consumption and we don't borrow for investment. So the moment you're borrowing for consumption, you can't have your cake and eat it at the same time. Si your cake imekuwa hapo hivyo, si umekula. There is nothing else. There is nothing that we're generating. So if we borrow for consumption, there is no generating activity. So hii ni kama serikali ilitupatia bure.
Yet, Njeri, this was one of the flagships campaign promises by the president, the Hustler Fund, because the belief by the Kenya Kwanza administration is that this Hustler Fund was going to be a game changer for the young Kenyan. Clearly it is not. Does it mean there's a disconnect between what the president and his Kenya Kwanza team believed is a solution for the youth and what the Kenyan youth believe could actually sort out their problems?
Fred, actually, I think the disconnect is not between what Kenya Kwanza believed and what the youth believe. The disconnect is between what Kenya Kwanza promised and what they delivered. Because there's no way you're going to give someone 500 shillings to start a business in this kind of an economy, in this kind of a business environment, and expect that business to actually even start off, break even, and repay the loan. If you borrow 500 shillings today, I'm telling you, you may even want to start that Mayai business they were talking about. By the moment you go to Gikomba to buy the trolley, to buy the stock itself, to buy the kachumbari, you're going to realize you need more than 500 shillings. And what do? You pass by Tao and you see chips and chicken rolling there, how they roll, and you decide, wacha nikule kwanza. So you see, so at the end of the day, the intention, actually that's what I believe, the intention for most of the youths when they were borrowing this money was pure. But when you actually, the rubber hits the road, then you realize this one is not giving. And so at the end of the day, you do what you have to do, you know. So at the end of the day, even from the leaders' point of view, they already taught us as youths, it's our time to eat. And we have grown up being shown into that kind of a path. So when it's our time to eat, even you as a youth and someone shows up with Hustler Fund, and you see all the other governments, this thing has not ever got to you. Even if you eat 500 shillings when someone is eating 5 million, we all feel like we are all winning at the end of the day. You know, winning is winning. It doesn't matter what magnitude that looks like. Yeah?
Tulipi.
Me sitasema Tulipi because personally they even never loaned me anything. I tried that system. I don't know what happened with my name. They didn't even loan me anything. But maybe youths hawalipi, but maybe to watalipa, wapewe tu time. The same, you know, Kenya Kwanza want us to give them time to deliver on their election promises. Some of which are so long overdue, you know. So wapewe tu my youths time. Wapatie time.
The place of politicians in coming up with these systems, they may be meaning well. It comes from a good place, a good heart. They want to resolve the issues that the youth are facing. But are they getting it right? The Hustler Fund, given the fact that it has not had the kind of impact that the president expected, was it thinking right behind it?
First of all, you have to understand that all this is happening because people are facing hard times economically, the youth more so. And I think it was a good thing, it was a good intention from the president, and they might have overlooked it, they might have overlooked the impact that this Hustler Fund might bring to the people. But I think going to the future, I think there is the group, the Hustler group, where you can borrow from, I think, 20,000, and I stand to be corrected to 1 million.
But if you don't pay back this 500, you won't be eligible for that. And that is exactly what the president is saying, that many people have borrowed the initial borrowing, but for you to qualify for a bigger or that group borrowing, you have to pay back the loans. But young Kenyans are saying, hatulipi.
That is why I'm saying in the mood, even to the side of the government, they should have seen even by now that what the youth needs is meaningful employment. That 500 shilling will not help anyone. They should be looking for meaningful employment going to the future. I don't think that thing has succeeded from where I sit. They need to sit down again and come with new measures. Yes.
Is it an issue of financial management for the younger Kenyan that giving them loans may not necessarily resolve their problems because probably they don't know how to run the money?
Okay, so first of all, I'm always a bit strict when it comes to also our discipline as young people. What I tell my comrades is that, the comrade is always right as long as you're doing the right thing, So the one thing that I'll say is that ni tabia mbaya kupatiwa pesa na ukatae kurudisha. Ni tabia tu mbaya. And we can't call it good manners if you're not like fulfilling your part or your end of the responsibility, But again, also, the person that is giving you this money. So I don't know whether even the president himself has ever tried to buy even one chicken, because he has a chicken farm and he's telling the biashara about eggs. But I don't know whether he has ever tried buying a chicken with even 500 shillings. So you need even a male and a female chicken. So you cannot even start rearing 2 chicken with that amount that is basically being given. So again, this is where the aspect of people are borrowing for consumption, not for business. The money that they are borrowing is not generating any other income. The moment you're in that spot, then nothing is likely to happen. And then the other one, okay, hii nitaongea na slang kidogo, but gava inafaa kuelewa, gava ni kama mzazi. Mzazi akikopesha do, inakuanga kitu ingine ngumu sana urudishe, most of the time. I'm not saying that the youth should not return money. Ni kama mzazi pia akikuomba pesa, inakuwa ngumu kurudisha pia. But now, but for this one, the government should also understand, that I felt that it was not a good spot for the government to place itself in. There would have been a better way to implement this, for example, encouraging the financial institutions that have the muscle to actually even, hawa watu wako tabia mbaya, wapate a way ya kurudisha hiyo pesa, kuwekwa places ka CRB. But kama government, the same politician atakama waambie, mimi nitawatoa CRB, alafu wapatie loan mkatae kulipa, alafu warudishe CRB. You see, the stones will be too many. So again, the government should also just avoid taking up too much responsibility and rather just empowering the institutions that are already in existence, such as banks, These Tala people, if they're the ones that they were saying about, hawa ndio wanapeana loans at a very expensive rate, at a very high percentage. They should just find a mechanism to curb and ensure that these people can give people loans at such a good interest rate through, again, policy making, through making the acts of the law, hiyo ndio kazi ya gava bejali, especially the parliamentarians, coming up with such systems to ensure that these funds can go out and there is a recovery mechanism. Lakini gava ikiamua kufanya kila kitu, we'll never solve this issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I'll give each one of you about 30 seconds to give your final comment on the discussions we've had. You talk to the youth and tell them what you feel. Let's start with you, Njeri.
Yeah, for me, what's most important for the youth is to keep putting their voices out there because, like I keep saying, everything is already against you. And when everything is against you, you don't lie down. You actually fight to rise up. You actually fight for your survival because it's really a jungle, survival for the fittest. So it's not really a time to throw in the towel. It's not really a time to feel voiceless. It's actually a time to know this is the time to make an impact. The reason we are here is because there are generations that made impact. When you look at the African story, people like Sankara, how old were they? You see the things they are doing at 30, the things they were doing at 5. Martin Luther, he may as well be in the Western, but he was already doing very impeccable things at 27. So it's not like we are going to say it's youths, we are powerless. It's actually, are we driven enough to want to be the voices for change, to want to be the drivers for reforms in this country, and so much so that we also leave a footprint in our generation. The youths who come before us, let them not talk or complain about the same issues that we are complaining about. Let them find us. We already made a way. We already created a space for them to actually be them. And we have already fought ageism in this country.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Levin.
My final take will be on the issue of the talks, the ongoing talks between Azimio and Kenya Kwanza. I think it is a good thing when we see people talking at this time, but what we will not accept is something extra legal. We saw what happened during the handshake. That one going to the future, it is something that will not be accepted. So it's a good thing they talk. There are a lot of issues that need to be addressed, and it's a good thing.
Okay, thank you. And Brian, you wrap it up for us.
Okay, so I'll take you to a book that I read that is actually Why Nations Fail. And it depicts a picture about Europe. Of course, we know the Western world is among the most developed. For us as youth, we do not expect to build this Kenya within one day. As the quote goes, good things indeed take time. The thing that I'd first of all like to plead with the government is, first of all, to know the facts of any case and study. Why would I say this? When the president stands and says that maybe our parents are able to take their children through high schools whereby they pay around 80,000 shillings a year, you forget that something unique happens in our universities. Once you come to university, you find that there's a population of around, let's say, like in JKUAT, I have a student population. I voice the concerns of around 30,000 students in JKUAT alone. Even the accommodation that is in JKUAT hosts only around 3,000 students. When the president talks about that, there's something very unique that I want to show you. The average rental income in Juja is around 8,000 shillings. Mm-hmm. In order for you to eat, and to eat like chicken, you need around 300 shillings a day. In a month, 30 days, you need 9,000 shillings. That is 17,000 shillings. Going to a year, that is around 204,000 shillings. You have not yet paid the school fees for this person. You have not yet given pocket money to buy at least some amenities, even pads for female students, you know. So that is one thing. Get the facts straight. The other thing to our youth, you're not too small. The mustard seed in the Bible grew to a big tree. I don't want to turn to a pastor, but even for you who feels that your voice may not be heard, don't worry. You just ensure that that small thing that you've been given, that small voice that you've been given, ensure that it speaks for what you believe in. And also, if you don't have to be the person on the front line, but once you see your fellow youth on the front line, ensure that you support this youth. And that is how we'll move, and that is how we will be heard as the youths of this nation. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brian Mutevu, President JKUSA.
Yes.
That's the Students Association at JKUAT.
Yes.
Dr. Githanga Njeri, a scholar and youth advocate, and Levin Okomo, political strategist. Our panelists this morning helping us with the youth perspective this Friday on Morning Cafe. Thank you so much for your time as well. Let's now go to my colleague Flora Limuki for feedback on the question that we were asking you this morning. Flora?
Well, let's now have a quick look at some of the feedback from Facebook as well as on X, and the whole conversation concerning the university funding model and the whole hiccups concerning what the CS for Education said yesterday, that is Machogu. And I see on X here, Isaac Wahenya says college and university students should report to school on Monday with or without school fees. Government will pay fees on later date. This is what the CS was saying. And Orina Matacho says Machogu is literally telling us, and he committed himself that government is going to pay all the students. How will they even ask students who don't qualify for sponsorship to just report to school? We are happy they will pay for all the students. And Janice Mukabi says the entire process is lengthy and it looks like they are in no hurry. I don't know why CS Machogu claims will write letters to the vice chancellors telling them to wait for the distribution of funds. Will that letter help with my fees? Will the letters be written even every year? And she further says that the CS said that only 30% of the 400,000 plus students have applied for government scholarship. The remaining 70% are yet to apply. And I do not think that our website can be broken for weeks in the name of being overloaded. Of course, that is concerning the whole help issue. Students have been complaining the whole week that they are unable to access the help portal to apply for their funds there for schools. And just trying to educate, just trying to get some more feedback from students here concerning Jim Ross Moody says this country is a joke. University education is only for the rich. Thousands will be locked out. CS Machogu issuing circulars to the university VCs will not help. And Olaf here says this is a lot that deserve to be declared redundant. Machogu looks tired every time it finally, Erickson says Matiang'i should be brought back to instill sanity in some things. We cannot expect anything better if we have the likes of the CS in the education. And that is just Dan Endekwa says this funding model was nothing but a